Welcome to another edition of Knickerbocker Banter. I'm your host, as always, Harris Wishard. Today we have a very special guest, Kory Waldron of Full Access Hoops Podcast. And I know a lot of Knicks fans are not going to like this one, but a big Indiana Pacer fan and supporter. Kory, welcome to the program.
Hey, Harris, how you doing? Thanks for having me on, man. We've honestly known each other for almost 8 years now, almost 10 years now, probably.
Yeah.
Happy to finally hop on and talk some basketball with you.
Definitely, man. Yeah, I met you at through OTG, right? And shout out to Nick Fay for connecting that great basketball website and did some podcasting back a decade ago. But let's jump right into what has, after the Philadelphia series, I didn't expect anything to calm down. This crazy Indiana Pacer New York Knicks rivalry renewed, and all of these games have gone down to the wire. Yesterday's no exception. Let's start with what's going through your mind when that shot's going up with 40 seconds left from Nembhard.
I mean, oh God, he's definitely taking a step back. Yeah, he's taking a step back at this time of the game, especially because I know I had a tweet that didn't age well. Nembhard really wasn't that good last night. Nembhard was, at one point before that shot, 1 of 7 from the field, had some bad foul calls, got a little bit out of control at times. But then in the biggest moment, he ends up putting the Pacers ahead, and that happened to be enough. But not a shot I'd like to see him take again, but in the moment, he hit it.
Well, yeah, I compare when I'm looking at him and watching this game yesterday, and it's crazy. I'm out in public watching, not like I love doing that, but I had a good time. And then you're probably the same way because I know what kind of fan you are. We go back, we watch it again, right? We watch it a third time, especially when our teams win.
Yeah.
Right? We watch even maybe a fourth time. But I'm watching, I'm like, this game reminded me a lot of game one. And the way that the Pacers came out to start the fourth quarter, you look up, you guys are down 9-10. You know your season's in the balance. And then a guy that did not respond in game one, that has been your star, responds with 7 straight points in that spot. He had the end one. He turned Brunson over. That's a game where usually when the Knicks are up 9-10, even though it's on the road, I feel good about. Haliburton answered the bell, and that was a big spot.
I mean, I'm not going to be honest, Harris. I thought you were going to take a 3-0 lead when you guys started pulling away in the fourth quarter, because that's the one thing about this Pacers team that I think a lot of people forget. They're very young. Like, this was a team that the over-under for wins was 37.5. They aren't supposed to technically be here for all that's worth. So when the Knicks start taking ahead, you guys have the Brunson and Killer and Jalen Brunson. Donte's red hot. I was thinking, oh man, the Pacers don't have the kind of offense to really pull this back. And like you mentioned, Haliburton, who after a really bad game one, answered the bell in back-to-back games here in game 2 and 3 with 34 points and 35 points last night.
Yeah, timely, right? Timely hooping. And what my biggest takeaway also, and I mentioned this, we were talking before, the what we've hung our hat on all season, the Knicks, is finishing possessions and being gritty down the stretch. And I'm not going to kill them. I'm not going to get all over them. To me, that's the main story. And we'll get to the refs later on in the show. But that's the main story, is that if you look at those last couple minutes in this game, the Indiana Pacers appeared to have wanted those basketballs just a little bit more. And it's rare. It's rare to say that. I feel almost uncomfortable saying it because I've done this show all year. And almost after every game, win or lose, I'm like, hey, listen, we know they made shots, you tip your cap. But it's like, it's a little deflating. I'm not losing confidence, but it's a little deflating. And credit to them for chasing those balls down and giving themselves more opportunity to finish the game.
Yeah, I mean, the physicality in this game was what stood out the most. The Pacers were matching the Knicks' physicality. Whether or not we're going to argue again the foul matter of whatnot, but Pacers, Siakam, Turner, they were really throwing guys around down low. You had Nembhard and Naismith playing really physical on Brunson. So there was just a lot of physicality that I didn't see the Pacers quite do a lot of on game 1 and game 2, but it looked like they came out with a way different approach in terms of wanting the Knicks to feel their presence on the court.
Yeah, and I think, and we'll touch on it now, the intensity of these games and how fast these games are getting played, it's hard to be consistent. I thought and again, I'm not one to complain about the refs. I've told you this, you know me, what could we have done better? Could we make our free throws? Like, let's stop making excuses. And that's what kind of bothered me a little bit about, and I'll let you defend your coach, right? Let you defend kind of how the Pacers reacted after those first couple games. But, you know, you want some consistency as a fan, right? That's what you want. Say, if it's going to be ref one way here, you want it to be run ref one way. But it's a very difficult job to do in the postseason. So I go in expecting, hey, I hope we win these games. I know this isn't going to be great. And we saw it throughout the regular season. It can be a problem. I don't know how you fix it. I don't know what the solution is, but I know I'm not going to harp on it. And I understand what Carlisle defending his team. I was just surprised that he brought up the market thing. This is a guy that's won an NBA championship, highly respected coach, highly respected. So after the first game, I was like, oh, he's not going to go down that nurse route, right? Like I really loved the fact what he said after game one. I think he was really in the heat of the moment after game two. I'm not giving him the pass, but he got ejected. He was very emotional. What are your thoughts on how this refereeing narrative is played out?
Yeah, I mean, first off, all Knicks fans clowning the Pacers for having 79 or 70.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I get it. Listen, that's way too many. Like, what are we doing here? We're like pretty much throwing the whole game tape out. What I will say about the game two complaints, I feel like it was more so about the fact they were down 2-0 after how game one ended. Because I think we can both agree the game one, like, you can't call that foul on Miles Turner with 12 seconds left in the playoffs. You gotta let these guys play. And then you not being able to overturn a kickball that was clearly hit by Naismith's hands. Yeah. Those are the only two foul calls for me that I was like, man, like, that's a bad miss. Those are really bad misses.
Right.
Game two, I felt like was pretty fair officiated. If Pacers fans want to complain about that game, to me, they're on their own. Because for me, it was only the gripe for game one. I think Carlisle, just the frustration, like you mentioned, losing 2 games in MSG, knowing how good this Knicks team was, he was just fed up that they were losing, I feel like, and wanted the team to show that he cared. And then I do think, though, him having those comments did have some sort of effect here in game three, because it did feel like, at least in the first half, they were letting these guys play for the most part. Really physical, and then when the game got tight in the second half, it felt like the refs all of a sudden were changing the way they were blowing the whistle. And I did feel like the Knicks, a couple of times, you guys were getting the wrong end of that whistle last night in particular.
Yeah, it happens, right? It happens. Now, guys have different approaches, and as much as I love Tibbs, I remember certain things that he was saying in the Philadelphia series to protect his guys. Everyone's got the different approach. Everyone deals with it differently. I'm just tired of people thinking that these games are actually being decided. Right. Like, and I said, let's talk about the factors. And I went over this after I did my game one recap. I said, I understand the frustration about the kickball. I would have been frustrated about it too.
Right.
I don't think the game should be decided on that screen. Maybe leaned in a little bit, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, you don't want the game, as Turner said, to be decided by that. But Josh Hart in that game one got that rebound off the free throw, right? That's inexcusable. That's inexcusable for the shooter to get the rebound. And then other things that happened at, the stretch of that game, and Brunson getting to his spots. It's a tough topic, right? It's just, I don't think there's really a true endpoint there. But when you break down the basketball aspect of it, that's where we can find out, hey, this is why the Pacers came out on top, and this is why the Knicks came out on top. Right. And you take the zebras out of it and really just move forward and say, hey, we got another, and I don't know if I'm going to make it because my heart drops every other possession this series. But it appears Knicks fans now without OG, and I don't make excuses, but it adds another element to his health and where he's going to be able to play. We have another crazy series on our hands. We have another, barn burner on our hands. No matter how you spin it, it's like, this is not, if anybody just thought, and I was not, I get caught up in the Knicks and forum chant outside MSG. I'm trying to have fun, right? But if you thought this was going to be easy, you simply haven't been paying attention.
I 100% agree. And again, to your point of like OG being hurt, and then tonight, right, or last night, Alec Burks, first half, 4-4 from 3. Another guy who hasn't been in your guys' rotation hops, and I'm sitting here like, Jesus, like this Knicks, it doesn't matter who gets hurt. Yeah. Got somebody else who's going to step in. Obviously, he didn't have a big second half, but yeah, I mean, you guys have your own adversity because the Pacers have one major injury and Benedict Mathurin being out for the duration of the season. You guys have what, 3-4 guys out, of course, and they're all major rotational players. Right. And continuously, despite any lead the Pacers have, it's no lead safe. Like game 2, for example, the Pacers, you can complain about officiating. Pacers sure took care of business. Brunson didn't play in the first half. He came back, and what happened? Brunson was the killer that he has been this entire playoff run.
Yeah. Well, what do you make of, and it feels like for Knicks fans, as long as the Villanova Big Three are on the court right now, there is a chance. And guys like Art, I know he didn't take a ton of threes last night, right? He only made one. I think it was early. Yeah. Right? But DiVincenzo obviously found himself in the postseason, as you mentioned. And then there's Brunson. But the elevated play and the winning mentality of the group, as I've talked about, makes you think that despite the injuries, this is what they're going to be able to overcome, because a guy like Art goes from shooting 31% from 3 to 40-something in the playoffs, right? It's impossible. His rebounding numbers are off the charts, right? I wish he could have gotten the 20. You can't complain about him, no. Yeah. But it is to me amazing how certain guys have elevated their play and taken on this role with all the minutes. What's your thought on guys now? Like, I know it's the playoffs, we got to play 45, 46, 47. I'm of the believer that, hey, we got to go out there and do it. You know, like we got to, if this is what it calls for, we got to do it. Yesterday it was a little bit less, but I know guys are giving, you know, Tibbs and saying, hey, can we get a look? This is it, guys. Like, this is, you know, we talk about the off season and getting yourself ready, and these guys are pros. Your thoughts on like the shortened rotations and heavy starter minutes?
I mean, I'm a fan of it personally. Like, obviously you have to do what you got to do to win these playoff games. I've actually wished Rick Carlisle to do it more. There's been too many times between the Bucks series and even this series where he's going 9 men deep on in the rotation. And not that the Pacers don't have the depth, because the Pacers have had one of the best bench units all year. Anyone who watches the team can see that and knows that. But you know, there's certain games like last night, like T.J. McConnell, Obi Toppin. Those guys weren't very good last night. And again, he still played them 20 minutes apiece. Now, granted, that's not that many minutes, but in a playoff game, that's half a game. And you're playing guys who are struggling. So, again, if you have the personnel, I understand trying to stretch out your rotation. But for me, if you're the Knicks, like, yeah, like, do I want Josh Hart playing 48 minutes every night? Probably not, but this is what you're playing for. You're playing for a chip, and honestly, I think we can both agree the Celtics aren't like that big, bad super team. I don't think the Pacers or Knicks, if they match up against the Celtics, are for sure not beating the Celtics. I don't think that team is super, super special like they've been made out to be all year.
Well, this is what I've also told a lot of people, and you make a good point. The Celtics they're a very good team, right? We can both agree they're a very good team. However, are they unbeatable? No. Like, this is one of those situations where when the last time both of our teams were in the conference semifinals, you had the big bad wolf looming in the next round. There's no LeBron. If anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, that was LeBron James in the prime of his career. There's no big bad wolf after this. Nope. Now, would they be underdogs? Would it be a tough series? Would a lot of things have to go right? Of course. And honestly, the expectation should be for Boston to reach the NBA Finals. It should be. But when you're playing out these games, you're thinking to yourself, it has to come to a point in a time where you're like, why not us? You don't get to this point in the playoffs. You don't play in these level and these competitive games without having that mentality. I don't care who you are. You're in this round. You're in the final 8 of the NBA. There's not an impossible team. There's not a top 5 generational talent waiting for you in the next round. You should have that belief that you can make this run. So that's why I do agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also what makes this series between the Knicks and Pacers even more meaningful, is I feel like both of these teams know that, is that this isn't like we're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals, because there's a serious chance that there's an NBA Finals run available if you get to the Celtics. Because, again, the Celtics have proven that home court doesn't matter. And in this series in particular, between the Knicks and Pacers, very good home court teams. Like, I don't know if you know this, the Pacers haven't lost at home since March 18th. The Pacers haven't lost a game at home since March 18th. 54 straight days of winning at home. And the Knicks are one of those teams where you're in MSG, that crowd, those Knicks fans, you've been there a couple times in the playoff run. Yeah. It's a different energy in there. And it can make teams kind of fold under that pressure.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. They really do a great job of bringing people together, right? It's just that I've talked about the atmosphere in terms of just what the energy has been like. And I'm just mentioning with Indiana, because I touched on this with people about the home court and what it would mean. This is not going to be the Philadelphia series, guys. Like, I tried to tell people that, like, people understand that, like, even though the Knicks had a very good opportunity to win that game, everybody's wearing the yellow. There's a few minutes left. It does make a difference, right? Like, it does allow you to put things together in a game. Like, if that type of game was played at the Garden yesterday, all Knicks fans would feel good about us being able to finish it. But, right, in Indiana, you talked about the stat. I didn't know it went that far back. I knew you were talking about the playoffs. That's pretty far back, right? To not lose a game at home, and they hold serve. Like, the thing that the Knicks were able to do in the first round that will be very difficult to do in Game 4 is they came back to the Garden up 3-1, gave themselves some cushion. To me, if the Indiana Pacers want to win this series, this is not me reinventing the wheel. This is not that bold of a statement. They had to win Game 3, and I believe they have to win Game 4. I don't think if they put themselves in a position where they have to win twice at MSG, that's going to be very, very difficult for a younger team. And And they have some talent. I respect what they have going on over there. But if you want to really take back and put some, I don't want to use the word fear, but maybe some concern to the Knicks and the organization, the fans, 2-2 MSG. Do we got OG? Do we have OG Anunoby at this point now? To me, that's the only route they could take.
And again, there's that, the cliche saying is a series doesn't start till you win on the road, right? Like that's the cliche playoff series. So can the Knicks come out tomorrow on a quick turnaround at mid-afternoon, and can they put pressure on the Pacers to go home and finish this thing off in a gentleman's sweep? And then for the Pacers, like your point, it's can Haliburton duplicate and keep up this offensive performance? Because again, Haliburton, for the most part, he's a point guard who plays like a very passive point guard. Now, his offense has upticked. Obviously, I don't know, you saw the video. He's also banged up. Everybody's banged up at this point, right? We know what the playoffs are.
That's this time of year. Yep, this time of year.
Donte's got the bad foot. Now, Haliburton had that weird fall where he caught the knee to the lower back, which has been an issue for him dating back to last round. So it's almost this series, who can stay healthier through the duration and who can pull up those closer shots near the end. Because the one thing I will say about the Knicks is I fear you guys in clutch time. Because all year, if you watch the Pacers as much as I have, we're a great team and we're fun in transition and we're good in the half court. But in that late game scenario, when the possessions matter and you're using more clock, I do worry about the Pacers' offensive scheme more so than I don't worry about the Knicks. You guys have Brunson. He's going to figure out the right shot. The Pacers are still trying to figure out their late game offense. It still gets a little bit wonky. Siakam, as I'm sure you can tell, been really bad at the free throw line. Did hit some clutch free throws last night. But that's been a problem with the Pacers is when that game really slows down near the end. And again, it feels like every game this year is going to be close. Also, just want to say to the ESPN halftime show, I'm not sure if you heard them. They were talking real shit about the Knicks, saying this game's over. It's going to be like a 10-point deficit at the time this is over. I'm thinking they're like, are we watching the same game? It's not a Knicks team that folds.
Well, I was out and I couldn't necessarily hear too much, but it doesn't surprise me, right? Because the national media has taken this approach of like, you got to keep proving it. You got to keep proving it. You got to keep proving it, which is fine, right? Like, I don't really care. I know I say that, and then I do get caught up in having the conversations, like with Draymond calling it a fluke, Barkley and Shaq talking down on the Knicks, saying you're going to get blown out by Boston, as I've said multiple times. But to me, it doesn't matter. Keep playing the right way. But some of the numbers, I call them grown man stats, and I look at them every single game. If the Knicks are on the right side of these numbers, they're usually successful. You guys beat us on the glass, 42-41 yesterday, right? You won the turnover battle and points in the paint. 56-40 points in the paint. I know OG's out, right? And Mitch Rob's out, and he's not really a great offensive threat. I don't want to talk about the guys that aren't here. However, when as we talked about with the loose balls and the 50-50s, when you guys establish that and play a little bit tougher, because I think there's this like label on the Pacers that they can't play as tough as the Knicks, right? They're not as physical, right? They're finesse. You talked about it. They love the transition. They love the three. It's hard to go deep in the playoffs without manning up, right? You could win your 45, 50 games in the regular season, but when it comes down to it at this time of year, and they did that yesterday, I will tip my cap. If you win the battle on the glass and you win that toughness battle, that's how you stay in this series. That's how you give yourself a chance.
Well, then it feels like, at least not last night, but the Knicks have been great at creating second chances, right? And obviously you guys were crashing offensive rebounds hard, and last night was the first game where you guys weren't getting as many second chance points. You guys weren't getting those offensive rebounds as often, ever kicking and starting second possessions, which, again, late in the game, which I feel like for you guys, when you guys were in MSG, that's what was kind of demoralizing to the Pacers is every time there was a shot, it was Josh Hart flying to grab an offensive rebound. It was like, oh, man, like we can't get a chance here.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you know what was weird about this game? And you had touched on it with McConnell and Toppin. The Knicks actually won the bench yesterday. Like with Burks and McBride. I had called for McBride to be a little bit more involved. His minutes were pretty good. For finally, like if you look at the plus minus, like I know I stare at the box score too much and I memorize everything, but
I do the same thing.
I'm a nerd stat. I'm a nerd guy sometimes with the stats. But the plus minus of the bench was in favor of the Knicks. And McConnell and Toppin, guys that had big impacts in game 1 and 2. So much to the fact where it's like, are these guys going to get an opportunity down the stretch? Now, you would know better than me how Carlisle likes to sub. McConnell was a pest for us in those first couple games. Not as much last night. Didn't have as much of an impact on the game. The starters were great. So our starters, not a problem for the first couple games. Last night, you look up and down this list, Like, it was weird. The Knicks even won the non-Brunson minutes, and I'm not suggesting that they try more of that. Excuse me, they lost the non-Brunson minutes. So they won. Excuse me, I'm going back and forth.
I got you.
They so much emotion going on in this game, but they were actually successful when he was off. It's a weird thing to say, and I'm not, again, suggesting that they try that more.
Right.
Your thoughts, and I know you touched on it before, on the bench and how much they're going to use them going forward, and what kind of impact guys like Top and McConnell will have in the future of the series.
I mean, again, so if we're talking about McConnell was real bad last night, but then in game 2, Pacer fans, more so than blaming the ref, like I blame Carlisle for taking out T.J. McConnell those last, 7 minutes or so, 6.5 minutes, because McConnell felt like the only guy who was putting some pressure on Brunson and being the pest, because that's what McConnell does. McConnell's the guy who's going to press you full court. He's going to make life difficult for you. He's very good around, the 14 feet around the rim, that little, pop-up shot he has, hitting the 3-ball decently well. Toppin, I mean, obviously you guys saw Toppin when he first started out in the league. He's really grown into a nice 3-point lob city kind of finisher. Now, again, how much they're going to lean on these guys, I'm not positive, but I will say is the good thing about those two guys in particular for the Pacers is when that starting unit is kind of dull on energy, when you put McConnell and Obi Toppin, or even Isaiah Jackson, as they've done the last couple games, the pace and the energy for the Pacers completely shifts. And it takes a couple minutes for the Knicks to adjust to that change in tempo. So I feel like the Pacers will continue to lean on that slightly only because of that change of pace. And the fact of the matter is, with your guys' limited depth, if the Pacers can give Siakam and Turner and Tyrese a few minutes of break while also speeding up that pace while you guys are still, trying to battle through, I feel like that's the one advantage the Pacers are trying to take. They're just trying to get you guys tired. And obviously, it hasn't worked. It's hard still playing 48 minutes and whatnot. But I feel like that's Carlisle's approach to expanding the benches. If we can get these guys and keep them running while our stars are resting, we can hopefully just out hustle them.
Yeah, and you know what? And to your point, somebody texted me this morning. We were going to our Knicks chat and said, I know I haven't been able to say this that much, but the Knicks kind of looked a little gassed, at certain moments, right? Where, and again, sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way. Sometimes rebounds will jump over your head and, you don't get the breaks. And, I look back at this game and I'm like, this guy really made a step back 40-foot or 35-foot 3-point shot to beat you. Like you said, but they put themselves in that position. All right. And you talk about the fatigue, it could become a factor, right? If you guys could stretch your bench a little bit longer, that's why getting those minutes that you got from Alec Burks is really important. I also thought that Tibbs went with him a little bit too long. I was shocked to see him on the court with 5 minutes to go in that game. Like, this is winning time. And this is not a knock on Burks, who again gave you that lift in the first half. But it's interesting to see, like, Carlisle could make a mistake. Now Tibbs could make a mistake. Now they go back to the drawing board. Now they make adjustments. Now we go into a game 4 where it's like a series. Like, as much as you want to sweep, it's like, damn, it is fun. Like, this is playoff basketball. This is what our older relatives got to experience more so in the 90s when it was Patrick and Reggie, and now it's Haliburton, Brunson, right? Like, this is what we are going to come to expect from our franchises going forward, because you guys aren't getting any older in terms of, what your roster's like right now. You're in a decent spot. We know the spot the Knicks are in. Like, I just tell every Knicks fan that I talk to, like, soak this up. As devastating as a playoff loss could be, or not advancing to the NBA Finals or Conference Finals, as devastating as that thought is, this is why you're a fan. These moments are why you're a fan. You truck through the regular season and you sacrifice some of your sleep and you miss some events sometimes to watch these games because we love it for this stuff right here, right? Like, I tell you right now, I hope we beat the Pacers in. You hope the opposite happens. Yep. This is how it starts again, right? We got a taste of it last year. Now you guys are back in the mix, and like, this is what the 90s were like, and now this is what I hope the rest of the 20s are like.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Pacers' first playoff appearance since 2020. Obviously, you guys were in there last year, so
yeah.
And both fan bases, for the most part, like, I don't think either team has been to the second round. Or you guys made the second round last year.
Yeah. Well, no one's been in the conference final.
Right. That's what it is. So, one of these teams is finally going to be back in the Eastern Conference Finals for
24 years.
Right.
24 years. And they played each other, right? They played each other in back-to-back conference finals. 99, Knicks won, and then 2000 when Reggie took Indiana to get beat up by the Lakers.
Yeah, he got lose by Kobe and Shaq did in logic fashion, yeah.
But yeah, man, it really is awesome to break these games down. And I've said it, like I get on here and like my voice struggles, my body hurts the next day. It's like, because like I don't care at this point. Like I'm putting it out there to people. Like this means more than just the basketball games to me. Like when you talk about it and live it as much as you do, it's like the fandom takes on to me. And I know it's the same for you because of how passionate you are about the Pacers. It simply becomes more than just winning or losing. I'm not saying it's the be all end all. I'm not saying, hey, you should be miserable for 2 weeks if your team gets knocked out. But I try to take the glass half full approach 99 times out of 100 and say, look at how much fun this is creating. I'm seeing people that I haven't seen since high school because of these runs. Like I'm connecting with family members. And then especially because I'm doing this now, which adds to it. But this is all great stuff. I don't want to wake up today and talk about the officiating. I want to talk about game 4. I want to talk about how we're going to win Sunday. I want to talk about how that game's going to be close and down the stretch. And hopefully we're on the right side of it. You're thinking the same thing. So it really has been fun. It really has been fun. That's really the bottom line.
I mean, that's how, I mean, as a Pacers fan living in New York, I mean, that's how I just, everywhere as I go, it's, you know, go New York, go New York, go. And I'm sitting here like, hey, Pacers, we're pretty good too.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, it's different, especially for us. And obviously the Knicks, you guys have been a tormented fan base for a lot of years. Obviously, you guys have had more hardships than the Pacers have if we're going back the last 20 years. Pacers have always been just, you know, pretty good. Just not good enough, but pretty good. And the Knicks have obviously been up and down. The Carmelo years were what they were, you know, got a little bit of a high, but then that dipped down. And then now, like, again, Jalen Brunson's doing things that we haven't seen before, right?
Yeah.
What was it, 4 plus, 40 plus? 40. Or yeah, so like, come on now. We're doing things that we haven't seen since Jordan, and those type of moments, they're special. You don't, players playing at such a high level like this. Now, obviously, we're all anticipating Jalen Brunson to continue this, but sometimes these are flashes in the pan. Again, I'm not saying that, but you have to soak in these moments because these runs don't always happen. They're few and far between that we have to get to see our teams on that biggest stage pressing for an NBA title. It doesn't happen to every fan base.
No question. And you know what? I would say by just my experience in a game and just watching it, you would think that there's staying power to this. However, like you said, between free agency and different circumstances and what other teams do and someone getting hurt and like you said, you don't know how things are going to line up. You'd expect the Knicks with the group that they have. You'd expect the Pacers with the group that they have to be in the mix for the next 5, 7, 8, 10 years, you hope, right? Right. You really just don't know. I don't think, go ahead.
Not to go jump, you could end up like the Brooklyn Nets. Like you could have sorry, Nick. I didn't,
no, sorry.
You could have a big 3 and all of a sudden it's just like, wow, it's gone. It's over. We didn't really do much. Like that's just how quickly these things change.
If Brunson is ever wearing the only time he could ever wear a different uniform, maybe if he wants to like retire for a year somewhere else. I can't even think of a scenario where you don't take this guy, wrap him up, give him whatever he wants. You are never going anywhere, sir. Yeah. Like this is where you need to be. I don't want to think of a scenario where he's not here leading this group. Cause and we talk about bigger than basketball, right? Like the intangible side that I talk a lot about, like how guys are in the locker room, right? What are their habits like throughout the year? How do they carry themselves as pros? Are they partying on the roads all the time, staying out till 4 a.m.? Like the human side of this that a lot of people don't really grasp. They think players are robots all the time. Is what you want. Like, could you think of a better guy? He has that. And listen, I don't want to say because Jeter has with the Yankees won so many championships, but to me, it has that same aura of like people respect him. He handles himself the right way. Not making the player comparison because it's a different sport and all that, but that kind of attitude is how you win in New York.
So what you just said is literally a conversation I had last night with my friends. And it was simply in the regards of this New York team embodies New York.
Yes.
They embody the toughness and the edge and the grit that New Yorkers have. And only New Yorkers know about that grit and know about that type of energy. You know, Jalen Brunson wearing the black hoodie and and a black top, just going to press conferences. Like that is New York. And this Knicks team, for all that it's worth, has truly embodied the city. And it's why you guys as fans have embraced this team so well. Doesn't matter who's healthy, doesn't matter who's there. We're going to give you everything we got until we're completely broken down.
Yep. And I will say this as we wrap up, and we'll have to, if you're around and as the series goes longer, You're obviously more than welcome to join anytime, but I got chills. Like, very few sport moments have made me feel the way that when Brunson comes out the other night, and I know they're making like the Willis Reed comparisons, all that. Like, that was the NBA Finals, so that, you know, that obviously is still at the top of the list. Yeah. However, when a guy that, when everybody's on their phone on Twitter checking if he's going to come back into the game, and then comes back in, and as everyone's chanting his name, is kind of doing the calm down, let me warm up. And those baskets in the second half, you know, you just wait, like you said, you wait so long in your fandom to experience moments like that, right? And the Knicks have suffered. So when those do come up, they are special. And I have to pinch myself, and I catch myself like talking about this a lot, but like it is like I could talk until I'm blue in the face about numbers, the games, but like on the outside looking in now, and you take that step back, you're like, what the hell is going on right now? The Knicks have played 9 playoff games, and 8 of them have been nutty. Like, the only game that wasn't nutty was when game 3, they got kind of smacked in Philadelphia and beat made like a bunch of threes, right? Like, that was the one game. But outside of that, games 1 and 2 at MSG with Philly were crazy. We know about game 4 in Philadelphia. Game 5, we don't want to be reminded of the Maxey game, right? Then game 6, crazy in Philadelphia. And then these first 3 games, it's like, these are just unbelievable basketball games going on. While the rest of the playoffs, you look up, Minnesota lost by 30 last night. The Celtics lost by 25 at home. It's like, the Knicks aren't playing in any of those games right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, both teams, both Pacers and Knicks have not been on really a lot of those big blowout games. They've been close, and maybe the Pacers have pulled away a couple games late against the Bucks, but all those games have been relatively close. They've been just, you have to grind it out continuously. There haven't been those really lopsided games like you just mentioned, like last night, that Nuggets game. That was over by halftime.
Right.
And same thing with the Celtics and the Cavs game. The Cavs had that one wrapped up, you know, halfway through the second half.
Yep.
So it's a different type of energy. And again, I think a special element too about this, and you know this, there's been a lot of Jalen Brunson versus Tyrese Haliburton debates this year, dating back to last year when Wally Szczerbiak had those comments.
Right.
And after the really
comments.
Right. Dumb comments. Correct.
Yes,
someone who just wasn't paying attention to what Haliburton had been doing.
Right.
And to see both of these guys elevate their games, especially like, obviously Brunson's been doing this, but as a Pacers fan, that's what I say, it was good to see Tyrese answer the bell, right? Mm-hmm. Jalen Brunson and the Knicks punch you in the mouth in game 1, and in back-to-back games, you show everybody why you are in the same conversation as some of these elite point guards. Because I know Knicks fans, maybe not you, but on the stage we're saying, like, don't put Tyrese Haliburton in the conversation with Jalen Brunson ever after game 1. And I'm still putting Jalen Brunson right here and Tyrese here because Brunson has been phenomenal this playoff run. Right. But Tyrese has put his name once again in a conversation of like, these are the point guards of the future for the NBA. These two guys.
I will say this, and you had mentioned he'd been banged up. He was playing at an unbelievable, you know this better than me because you follow the team close. He was playing at an unbelievable level right around the in-season tournament. Yeah, and he averaged 28 points a game in November. And then you watch it dip a little bit. And not to say he can't impact the game without scoring because he's one of the better passers in the league as well. But I was curious to know, and I watched a few of those, some of those Bucks games, but I was curious to be like, when are we going to see the player that we saw at that point in the season? And especially after only taking 6 shots. It's one thing to only have 6 points. It's another thing to only take 6 shots. Yeah. That's not enough. Then he took like 18 shots. Next thing now, they say he took like 26 shots. So now you're starting to see that confidence, which as a Knicks fan is like, oh, you kind of wish he would not be as confident as he is right now. So you were waiting for that. And like you said, he's still a younger guy, right? He hasn't been in the league a ton, right? Yep. So he will develop into something even better than he is now. But I was waiting to see what I saw earlier in the year. And like you said, now you're starting to see it. I'll always say that Brunson, I'll take over almost anybody the way he's going right now, right? Like there are a couple better players in the NBA, but he was just so special and he's been playing at such a high level. Yeah. But I don't necessarily get caught up in like, oh, Haliburton's trash. Like in the heat of the moment of like when I'm at the game, I might scream some things that I wouldn't say the next day because you're just so caught up in it. But he's been very good these last couple of games, even better than very good. And they will need that though. If they're going to win the series, they're going to need that. I can't see a scenario where he takes a step back. Let's say he averages 19 or 22 for the rest of the series. Yeah. I think they need him near 30 to win this series. That's just where I think he needs to be.
I mean, I honestly have more of a gripe as a Patriot fan like Siakam. I haven't felt Siakam much. I think if you're from your perspective, I mean, Siakam, I don't think has put much fear into the Knicks at this point in time. Like last night, he had 26 points. That was a quiet 26 points. It did not feel like Siakam.
We had the big basket down the stretch.
Yeah, he had the big basket late in the game. In the first half, too, he had with 0.6 remaining on the clock, he had a little behind the back fadeaway.
Yeah, that was big.
That was big to end the half. But Siakam, and again, foul trouble as well last game. But I feel like the Knicks, especially in the first two games, that's why you guys miss OG so much, is OG was making Siakam's life really difficult those first two games.
Yeah.
We finally saw Siakam kind of break loose despite still being quiet. So I feel like that's another aspect of this series to watch is, can OG get back on the court for a game 4 or a game 5?
Yeah, and they'll try. What I've heard, what I expect to happen right now is him to definitely miss 4. I hope I'm wrong. If it's 3-1, he'll definitely miss 5. That's how I look at it. Like, they're going to probably play it by ear here. If it's 2-2, hey, OG, can we, let's see, what can we do here? Can we get you in spot minutes? And if he misses 5, then obviously you run the risk of being down 3-2. So that's where you have to play that carefully. If the Knicks were to steal it, I can almost guarantee you he wouldn't play game 5 up 3-1. If they weren't able to, I think that changed some things. But Siakam, as you said, it was quiet, but at the same time, the goaltend basket that put him up 3, and then he did have that end 1 earlier in that fourth quarter. Who's guarding him now, right? I think Art was guarding him for one possession. Then I think Precious didn't really even play much late down in the stretch. He went smaller. The Knicks were like, you know what? We're either going to go to Burks, which I didn't like too long, and then McBride. So when McBride's in the game, you have McBride, DiVincenzo, Brunson, Art at the 4. You're going small. And the Pacers took advantage on the glass. It can't just be Josh Hart. It's somebody. Hartenstein, I wanted a little bit more out of last night. I thought he was good in game 2. Actually, he was pretty damn good in game 2. Hartenstein's going to have to be, I said this the other day on the podcast, A+ for the Knicks to win the series the way they want to win it. If he's not, good luck. It's probably going to go longer than we want. And at that point, it becomes the 50-50. But if you get a very good Hartenstein, I think that changes things for the Knicks.
Well, that was a big thing in games 1 and game 2 is Hartenstein up top of the Josh Hart rebounding. Hartenstein was the one grabbing some crucial offensive rebounds over top of Turner. And we didn't see that last night. Now, granted, I know, the Knicks fan listening, you guys probably could throw me a couple highlights of Siakam and Turner holding Harten's legs. So, hey, I know there was some extracurricular stuff going on last night. I did feel like Hartenstein wasn't as effective. That's why guys like Miles Turner as well. Miles Turner had his best game of the series last night.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I know you are too. I want you to enjoy the rest of your weekend and enjoy at 3:30. We got a little Mother's Day basketball Sunday afternoon special. Reminds you of the good old days. Knicks, Pacers. Knicks lead the series 2-1, and it's only going to get better from here and entertaining. Kory, appreciate you very much sitting down, taking a couple minutes. If the series goes longer, we're definitely asking you back, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. Would love to be back. Would love to be back on, and let's enjoy the rest of this series.
All right, man. Knickerbocker Banter signing off. Talk to you guys soon.